Good evening. Tonight, the weatherman is asking all farmers and indeed all Kenyans to prepare for heavy rainfall that begins in October and will run through to December. And some of these areas in the country will receive more than heavy rainfall. We have details lined up for you, and including the warning shot by President William Ruto to sugar cartels in Western Kenya, and of course appearing to respond to the opposition over their accusation that he was threatening investors. The president says he will not backtrack on the war against sugar cartels. Also tonight, our conversation will be with the East African Community Secretary General Peter Mathuki. We want to figure out how the EAC looks like so far and what is the role of retired President Uhuru Kenyatta as a facilitator in the DRC process. How does that augur with the accusation that he is participating in local politics? You get all those answers in our conversation tonight. But first things first, here are tonight's highlights.
We cannot continue to entertain corruption, wastage, and theft in whatever name.
War on sugar cartels is unstoppable. President Ruto says as he winds up a 5-day walking tour of Western Kenya, hitting the ground running. National Dialogue Committee signs the framework to guide the bipartisan talks a day after the Senate's approval.
It is expected that most parts of the country will experience enhanced, that is, above average rainfall.
And it's a rainy year wrap-up with heavy rainfall starting October and running through to December. Our Sign language interpreter tonight is Lucy Maura. My name is John Jacob Kioria. You're very much welcome to the broadcast. The war against corruption in the sugar sector is unstoppable. President William Ruto says his administration will deal firmly with unscrupulous players who are allegedly frustrating the revival of the ailing sugar sector. President Ruto further castigated the opposition for frustrating efforts to rid the sector of corruption and cartels.
Moribaramu.
On his fifth and final day of the Western Working Tour, President William Ruto, in the company of the top government officials, launched the Kakamega County Aggregation and Industrial Park in Likuyani constituency shortly after meeting farmers from Kakamega County at the Kakamega State Lodge. The head of state then commissioned the Kenya Medical Training College Navaholo campus. Ruto said that his administration will increase funding for KMTC campuses to open up job opportunities both locally and overseas.
Sasa hii ni college ya maana sana. Sasa nyinyi watoto wetu muingie hapa.
So this facility here imetufungulia na tumeongea pamoja na management ya KMTC. The board is here, the chair together with the CEO and management. Tumesema tunaenda kufanya bidii. Within that gap, in the next month or so, tuone kama tunaweza weka hapa wanafunzi 100.
He also used the opportunity to reiterate that the government will leave nothing to chance in the fight against corrupt sugar subsector players.
Kampuni hizi zingine zote za sukari za kibinafsi zinafanya kazi. Wanalipa wakulima, wanalipa wafanyikazi wao. Mbona hii kampuni yetu hii hailipi wakulima na hailipi wafanyikazi? Kwa iko kizirani. Wameniandika, wamejaza maneno kwa magazeti, sijui Law Society wamesema nini, sijui watu Azimio wamesema nini. Wacha nirudie ndio wasikie vizuri. Nimesema wafisadi, wakora, wezi, wale wanaiba pesa ya wananchi, wameangusha kampuni ya Mumias, wameenda wakaangusha kampuni ya Nzoia kwa sababu mambo hiyo yote inaharibika. Alafu wanakuja hapa wanajifanya. Nimesema wafisadi wote, wakora wote, wezi wote wahame Kenya.
Accompanying leaders from the region rooting for the region's unity and support for the Kenya Kwanza government.
Watu wa Western Kenya wote tuwache kubahatisha, kwa sababu serikali ambayo sasa iko kupitia kwa kura za Wakenya ni serikali ya William Samoei Ruto.
Sasa kutoka leo sisi kama jamii ya hapa mkoa wetu, let's move together. Kama ni kosa tufanye pamoja, kama ni mazuri tufanye pamoja. Ndiyo siasa yetu iwe nyorofu, ndiyo tuweze kupata bargaining power.
Timothy Kipnusu for Prime Edition.
Now, the audit of the 2022 presidential election, the cost of living, and the reconstitution of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, are some of the issues that will be discussed in the next days by the National Dialogue Committee. On Wednesday, the committee agreed on a framework that will guide the negotiations, but is still expected to list issues considered urgent by Friday this week. Giverson Minor with the details.
Kenya Kwanza Alliance and Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition members of the National Dialogue Committee on Wednesday signed a framework agreement that will guide the dialogue for the next 60 days, starting Tuesday when the Senate approved the committee.
And we continue to tell Kenyans to ignore the naysayers. There will always be those who feel threatened for whatever reason by something so illustrious, because this is wonderful work.
During the 60-day period, the Kalonzo Musyoka and Kimani Ichung'wah-led committee shall carry out public participation to collect views from professionals, experts and members of the public before submitting its final report to Parliament.
We have also resolved that we shall be extending invitations to stakeholders and members of the public to present their memorandums to the committee.
According to the framework, agenda of the talks shall be adopted by consensus or by a majority of the committee members. The committee shall also ring-fence issues agreed by consensus to avoid amendments when the report will be tabled in Parliament. Kalonzo and Ichung'wah also revealed that the committee has written to the ABC selection panel to take note of the ongoing talks about the recruitment of the electoral body, adding that the process may be affected depending on the resolutions by the committee members.
You could end up with a reconstitution of the panel itself. You never know. Everything is on the table.
We really don't speculate on what will come out of the dialogue process. Therefore, when we engage, that's why we ask them to kindly take judicial notice that it's one of the issues on the table. We are not writing to them to stop doing their work. It's just to take what has been described by the Honorable Eugene Wamalwa in our meeting as judicial notice.
The technical wing of the National Dialogue Committee has been tasked to prioritize agenda issues of discussion by Friday this week, when the committee is again expected to meet. Giverson Minor, Prime Edition, at the Bomas of Kenya, Nairobi.
Obviously, the catchword in that story is ring fencing. There are some clauses, obviously, out of that report that will be ring fenced from amendment by both houses of Parliament once the report has been tabled. Kenyans are tonight being urged to prepare themselves for heavy rainfall beginning October through to December. The weatherman says some areas, especially Central Highlands, could receive rainfall of over 700 millimeters. And as Judy the Kolo reports, you're being encouraged to get your farms ready because the short rain season may bring along some bumper harvest.
The country is headed for a season of heavy rainfall. The weatherman is asking weather-sensitive sectors to take heed and take advantage of the availability of rainwater to increase productivity.
It is expected that most parts of the country will experience enhanced, that is, above average rainfall that will be fairly distributed in some parts of the country and well distributed in others, both in time and space.
Speaking when he released the short rain seasonal forecast, Director of Kenya Meteorological Service, Dr. David Gikungu, said that some areas could receive heavy rainfall of over 700 millimeters. The rainfall will be fairly distributed both in space and time, making it a good season for agricultural productivity. The weatherman says that the northeastern counties that have been in a long period of drought are expected to receive enhanced rainfall.
Several parts of the country are likely to experience rainfall going into January 2024. The forecast indicates that several parts of the country are likely to have an early onset.
The head of food security in the Ministry of Agriculture, Dr. Mary Mwale, asked farmers to register for the subsidized fertilizer.
We're expecting a bumper harvest. So from our monitoring and assessments and early warning information, we have been able to estimate the production for the year from the long rains, and now considering that we expect the short rains, we have been a bit conservative, but in most areas, because of the fertilizer interventions, we are also expecting a higher than normal average for yield per area.
The Kenya Red Cross Secretary General, Dr. Ahmed Idris, said the enhanced rainfall will help in the recovery from drought in the arid and semi-arid lands.
That are receiving above normal rainfall and rely on rain-fed agriculture, we need to put in place mechanisms for supporting small-scale farmers, mechanisms which we will be working on, including possible seed distribution in the eastern parts of the country, western parts, and parts of the coast.
Dr. Ahmed Idris urged for proper utilization of the seasonal forecast to help cushion the public from adverse impacts that may arise during the season. Judith Akolo, Prime Edition.
Let's focus on a controversial story that hit the country about 3 weeks ago. And Attorney General Justin Muturi now says the foreign data company WorldCoin was not licensed to operate in the country, and hence they illegally captured data from the public. Appearing before the ad hoc committee of the National Assembly investigating WorldCoin's activities in Kenya, the Attorney General faulted the Data Protection Commissioner for issuing Tools for Humanity, a firm under which WorldCoin operated, with a certificate of registration, yet it was not licensed as per Companies Act.
On one side, they are aware of the registration of cells. On the other side, they are not aware of the registration of Tools for Humanity. So my concern pretty much is if there's a gap or if it's just an issue of overlap of mandate.
There are so many now cryptocurrencies, maybe that are operating in Kenya. Can you confirm whether they have this certificate of compliances from BRS?
If you are to take these people to court today as a advisor to the government, or you are going to defend the government to prosecute them, under what laws would we be prosecuting them?
I want to say that the laws we have are not sufficient. They are inadequate, and it's for that reason that my team will be delving into that to explain that there is a proposal from the National Treasury working in conjunction with the Central Bank and the Office of the Data Commissioner. And I think the ICT Ministry to set up a task force to look, to examine the whole area of digital currencies in this country and our level of preparedness, even from the point of view of consumer protection.
Is yet another controversial story here. And Judith Jepchirchir, the woman at the center of a parliamentary probe into an alleged job scandal in Eldoret, was on Wednesday thrown out of a committee meeting after failing to withdraw a letter that had accused the Senate of bias. Senators accused Jepchirchir, the director of Final Choice Recruitment, I'll take that again, the First Choice Recruitment and Consultancy, of arrogance and of feeling untouchable. Some of the scandals victims say First Choice has left a trail of broken promises, bankruptcy, and shattered dreams.
Testimonies of how over 1,000 people fell victims to false promises of lucrative jobs abroad dominated the last day of hearings into the scandal. Victims narrated harrowing tales to senators of how they lost millions of shillings into the hands of First Choice agencies.
Some sold their properties. As I speak, I lost my parent through this, following this money for recovery. And again, I'm still at home. I've not gone to Australia. Well, and when I go to ask for my money, they threaten me. They tell me they will arrest me and they will open a file for me. So I've come here for you to assist me.
For my relative, they also sold their car. They were 3. 2 they remained, and the other one went for 2 months. It was a 5-term contract, 5 months contract, but she had to go through. Even she didn't stay in Qatar, she came back.
Judy has paralyzed my life, and it is not a story. I sold the motorbike. Here is an agreement. Here is an agreement. It is not a paperwork. It's an agreement that I sold my valuable motorbike and nililipia up to 250,000. Niko na agreement ya shamba ya baba yangu hapa. Nilidanganya wazazi mpaka wakauza shamba because we were promised green pastures by Judy.
This one is a international con fraudster working so closely with NEA and Ministry of Labor, and she's in business.
Churchill refused to withdraw an assertion that had accused the Senate of bias in the probe. She was kicked out of the hearing.
We should not entertain any debate from council. It's a direct withdrawal and apology, otherwise we can proceed.
Huyu Judith Chepchirchir lazima arudishe pesa ya Wakenya. Na hii atuombi ni pesa ya Wakenya. Na mimi naomba chairman, mnapoenda kukaa chini mwandike report yenu. Huyu amekuja hapa badala ya kuja kujibu mashtaka ambayo kamati inamulisa, anaanza kusema kamati ndio imekosea. Kamati inakoseaje na wanauliza pesa ya Wakenya?
Trying to intimidate this committee, trying to blackmail this committee chairperson shows the condescending attitude ya kusema utadu. That's the attitude that we need to fight in this country.
Our position still remains. In terms of an apology, that would be an indictment.
That ends it there. So,
they can be withdrawn. They can be thrown out.
During the hearing, the victims accused the DCI officers in Eldoret of protecting the agency and called for the transfer of members of the police service in the region. They further want the National Employment Authority streamlined to curb cases of agencies conning Kenyans.
Judy threatened me. Also, the DCIO from Eldoret threatened me, and I recorded. I remember troubling the evidence here, and he was telling me that you will do nothing with Judy. We will protect with all our might, and we will arrest you. Plus, the other.
After kufanya hiyo application kufanya mass registration, alinyimwa na NEA, lakini aliendelea kusajili watu in masses. So, hii ni biashara yake. And some other few people are going.
The committee, which has since retreated to write its report, has urged members of the public to forward additional evidence to the Senate clerk in a week. For Prime Edition, I'm Gladys Mungai.
Now the tussle over control of the Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital continues as Attorney General Justin Muturi tasked Parliament to take up the matter and give the way forward. Muturi appeared before a National Assembly committee to respond to concerns that the state corporation should be reverted to Kenyatta University to benefit medical students at the institution.
The National Assembly Public Investments Committee on Governance and Education on Wednesday invited Attorney General Justin Muturi to give his perspective on the mandate of the Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital after its transition to parastatal status.
The students now have nowhere to train, to research. We went and the students now are doing it in Kiambu Hospital, which is not enough. They are sitting in tents.
While inside Kenyatta University, there is an institution which can serve them better, with even super tuition blocks. Mkuu wa sheria.
The Attorney General expressing disappointment at the state of affairs.
If Kenyatta University developed Kenyatta University Teaching, Research and Referral Hospital, then you cannot say that you have taken it away from Kenyatta University and created a parastatal and tell them you now own it.
you would have to go again, as we have resolved in the other matter, a possibility that could be explored. You have to go through, as per the Constitution, through a process of compulsory acquisition, which has not happened in this case.
Even in that, compulsory acquisition is due to public demand. Now, in this case, demand is that students want the hospital.
Well,
MPs imploring upon the AG to intervene.
From the word go, the institution, that is the Kenyatta University, built this hospital. So could there be any loan which is pending, and if it is being paid, who is paying?
Attorney General, what is the quickest way legally, and we are looking at less than a month, to kick out those thieves? Court already ruled that the land belongs to Kenyatta University. We want your commitment and a plan.
The next question I want to ask is, which I think Honorable Zambia did raise, and you also raised this, Mr. Chairman, that this hospital was developed through a loan from the Exim Bank of China.
Yes.
And that, I think, is a matter of public authority. Is the loan being repaid, or has it been repaid? And if so, by who?
The AG advised the committee to use 2 reports by 2 committees on health and implementation compiled during the 12th Parliament that directed the hospital be returned to the institution in 6 months.
Because that decision ought to be extracted and be communicated to the executive office of the president. This is what Parliament said, Mr. Chairman. Because if we implement that, in fact, we will not be here. We will not be here.
Muturi is proposing that the creation of state corporations should be done by Parliament. Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital became a state corporation under the Ministry of Health soon after it was opened to the public in October 2019. Kamchimenza for Prime Edition.
We are taking our first breather on Prime Edition, but don't go too far. We've more news lined up for you, including business and sport, and later on our conversation with the Secretary General of East African Community, the Honorable Dr. Peter Mathuki. Don't go too far.
The 9th World Cooperation Industries Expo will be held in Istanbul, Turkey from the 17th to the 21st of September 2023. Join this exciting exhibition to grow your business, trade and network with various businesses all over the world. To register, call or WhatsApp this number.
Colgate Herbal is formulated from a unique blend of natural herbs and is scientifically proven to strengthen teeth and keep gums healthy. Try Colgate Herbal, scientifically proven for strong teeth and healthy gums.
From the 4th to 6th of September 2023, Kenya will host a climate summit like no other, the Africa Climate Summit, an ambitious call for collective climate action at scale convened by the African Union. Wondering what sets this summit apart? The Africa Climate Summit moves away from the blame game in tackling the urgent climate crisis, rethinks global climate finance structures, unites Africa with the rest of the world to drive climate-positive growth, increase investments and maximize opportunities for climate solutions. The summit leverages the continent's immense human and natural capital for global decarbonization.
As Africa, we are committed to bringing everyone on board in order to make every voice to be heard.
Africa Climate Summit, driving green growth and climate finance solutions for Africa and the world.
Baby, when we first met, I never felt something so strong. You were like my lover and my best friend.
It's burning low. Only miss the sun when it starts to snow. Only know you love her when you let her go. I'm never gonna tell you a lie.
Shamsa mke wa Zito. Zito linambia kuwa hana mke, mimi sitaki kujua.
Kiza Jamal. Shamsa is my wife. Achana naye. Sawa.
Zito kufa kuzikana.
Zuri. Zuri umefanya. Zuri.
Welcome back. You're watching the Prime Edition. Scientists globally are leveraging technology to control and manage harmful organisms that cause infectious diseases and the spread of viruses. The key areas of focus are public health, agriculture, and environmental conservation. This was revealed during a global congress focusing on emerging genetic biocontrol technologies, as Tess Mutai now reports.
And economies in transition.
Scientists from 18 countries gathered in Nairobi to discuss elements of genetic biocontrol technologies that are emerging in the sector. The scientists said that the focus is shifting to techniques that alter the genes of an organism in order to control pest species in the environment by modifying their biological processes.
So this conference is all about genetically modified organisms, specifically genetically modified biocontrol agents. And specifically we are looking at new tools that people term them as gene drives, gene editing, or synthetic biology.
Through biocontrol technologies, mosquitoes are being genetically modified to reduce malaria infection in Africa.
A lot of our children are dying because of malaria, and it's a big problem in Africa. So genetically modification has also been started for malaria, and therefore we are interested in Africa because this is a tool that is going to help us reduce malaria.
According to biosafety experts, there is a need to create public awareness about genetic engineering.
We connect with this team because what they are doing is creating public awareness and education in the space of genetic engineering. Now, when we apply this technology, it targets specifically the pests, and it doesn't affect any other organism in the environment, therefore protecting the environment and also reducing the cost of production.
Another intervention is training Kenyan engineers on how to set up and maintain local laboratories where scientific studies will be undertaken in a controlled zone.
And the idea is we want to train people to set up such a infrastructure for BSL-3. We want to design, then really build it with a very, very huge local content, we call it. So from Africa directly, and finally also maintain it for themselves.
As scientists continue to focus on emerging trends in biocontrol technology sector, communication has also been highlighted as a key aspect in linking scientists and stakeholders. For KBC Channel 1, I am Teresa Mutai.
When the son of a clan leader returns to his village following his baptism, he must choose whether to inherit his father's legacy or fulfill his newfound purpose in life. There's a story of Where the River Divides, a film inspired by a true story, and which is our focus tonight on our weekly segment, Cinemas and Theatre.
Where the River Divides is a story that follows the journey of the son of a respected clan leader who, upon his return to his village following his baptism, finds himself at a crossroads, torn between two divergent paths. On one hand, he stands to inherit his father's esteemed legacy, a role laden with expectations, traditions, and responsibilities. On the other hand, he is faced with the allure of a newfound purpose, Christianity. Despite the conflict the protagonist in the film must face, the film's overarching message is one of unity and shared human experiences transcending linguistic and religious boundaries.
Where the River Divides, it's a timepiece, a film that was inspired by a man called Dennis, whose life was very interesting. It's not like most of us who've lived and have had persecution from our parents. So him, because of his religious belief, he was ostracized and to the point of being killed. Our desire and inspiration was to make it a story that can transform people's lives.
The cast comprises only Luo-speaking actors since the setup and premise was in the Luo culture.
We needed to find cast in Nairobi who are all Luos, and we used a casting director. It's called Isaiah Evans. We auditioned them around COVID. It was during COVID, 2020. COVID also delayed us filming because of the restrictions, and some of the crew members were coming from the US. So we lost actually some of the cast members in between that process, but eventually we got the people we wanted.
Set in a tight-knit village in Migori County, Isaac Masiga, the film producer, notes the location plays a big role in determining the outcome of the film.
So because it was a timepiece, we had to make sure that the cast looked and felt and behaved like they were doing in the 70s. We needed an environment that had a pen for cows, where cows were, sleeping, and then a community-looking house. And we ended up finding Thimlich Ohinga historical site. My main desire is to see the film industry grow to where it is right now. And the only way to do it is to get a lot of stakeholders involved in supporting local artists, local talents, and bodies like Kenya Film Commission can even help to alleviate some of the charges to do with location fees, to do with flying drones, or even importation of equipment, filming equipment. I think it will take the film industry to a very different level.
Originally filmed in the Luo, where the river divides, has also been translated into both Kiswahili and English.
Right now it's available on My Movies Africa, and they can go there and just look it up. Apart from other films that are there, where the river divides is there, and they can find it there.
Jacqueline Masharia for Cinemas and Theatre.
Kwa majina naitwa Nick Wenwa, yangu ni Ngong. Loto nimekuwa nikicheza sasa ni miezi 3, mwakisha at least kwa siku cheza kama mara 2 hivi. Kwa hivyo unaweza wasihi mzidi kucheza na muendelee kucheza hilo Loto Moto. Watu wanashinda.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
Vijana chapa kazi wenye nguvu za ziada.
My youth, uko na talent ya kusing, spoken word, kucompose jingles ama any other unexploited artistic talent. Gava through Ministry of Information, Communication and the Digital Economy na KBC sasa wamekama up na project ya kupromote usanii called Studio Mashinani. Hizi ni studios ziko grassroots and they are fitted with high quality state-of-the-art equipment where you can produce quality audio and video music content for free. What's more, wanaoffer mentorship na talanta yako itakuwa promoted on KBC Channel 1 TV, Y254 na radio stations za KBC. Tembelea studio mashinani huko Comarox, Langata, Sauti House Mombasa, Kirwara huko Gatanga, Kitui next to Manyanyoni Chiefs Camp na Kisumu City wako hapo KBC station. Usilalie talent. This is your chance to commercialize and popularize your talent through studio mashinani.
Swali alafu akuchipu.
Swali gani?
Akikuchipu na nitakuchapa sana.
Bwana wewe iko chapa mimi wewe iko bwana yangu hata bwana yangu hapa nikoshika mimi
wewe. Hii nayo utanyongwa. Hii ya uwaji.
Nyongani nini?
Afisa wa polisi.
Nyongani nini?
Konyongwa.
Are mama you iko threatened mimi in live court over here. People you have seen witnesses you iko threatened mimi.
Mdomo una sellotape wewe. Maana usiki.
So what is your problem you to bring me here?
Mimi alileta wewe hapa sababu wewe ni mhusika mkuu wa wizi ya meters.
Pipi yangu ni nani?
Sisi Sunita.
Uliambiwa wewe ni pipi yangu?
Wewe mwenyewe ndio ulisema kwamba Sunita ni bibi yako.
Mukana anje bamulanga.
Wewe. Lakini umama.
Good evening. Thank you for staying with Prime Edition here on Channel 1. Time to get the latest in the world of business. My name is Betty Kiptum. Now, all the employees of the defunct Kenya Petroleum Refinery Limited will be absorbed by the Kenya Pipeline Corporation. Energy Cabinet Secretary Davis Chirchir says KPC is working on a plan to revive the dormant oil refinery which was acquired by the government from Indian oil giant Essar. The CS spoke during a tour of the facility in Mombasa County.
Kenya Pipeline Corporation comes into KPRL with a very strong balance sheet, Your Excellency, of about 150 billion shillings. And with a strong company coming in to take KPRL, we can be able to see once again activities. So we expect Kenya Pipeline, and the CEO is here, Joe Sang, with his team and the board, to quickly look at the investment option, take advantage of our location, and ensure that KPRL is working for us, working for the region, working to make our lives better. So we'll be looking at that and working quickly because opportunities are not going to be there waiting. Nobody's losing jobs. We had, like Governor said again, we had PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, doing a study to confirm which was the best acquisition option. And we've zeroed in on the acquisition by transfer of shares as opposed to transfer of business. That would have many challenges.
The county government of Mombasa will give written delegated powers to the engineers at Kenya Pipeline so that when it comes to matters of approval, we'll allow them to be able to approve to remove all these bottlenecks. However, urban planning will be included so that in our planning, when we are now planning the whole of Mombasa, we can now not have a problem where there's going to be an oil pipeline is crisscrossing where there's water pipeline. And it has been something that has been a nightmare in the past.
And it will take Kenya Airports Authority 2 weeks to commission new generators with a capacity to power operations at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Acting Kenya Airports Authority Managing Director Henry Ogoye says the new generators have a capacity of 8 megavolt amperes over the 6 MVA needed to power operations at the country's premier airport. Trevor Ngendo with the details.
The blackout witnessed at East Africa's busiest airport over the weekend left the country with eggs on its face as travelers were forced to use personal lights and mobile phones after lights went off. This has caused a major public uproar that forced the government to make management changes at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and Moi International Airport in Mombasa. On Wednesday, JKIA was the center of attention with members of the National Assembly's Transport and Infrastructure Committee putting the Kenya Airport Authority officials to task of the weekend power outage.
The one which was manual could not be put manually. Who was supposed to put it manually were those people there. If they were not there, then those are the people who would have started sacking them. It took 90 minutes because the team that was on ground required support, and some of us had to come from home.
Even if it is a sweeper who did not sweep at that particular time, or a janitor who did not open that door, we want to know.
I think the entire Kenya Airports Authority management should be overhauled.
What happened here on Friday night?
What happened was that the generator, which was supposed to back up, misfired, and it could not come on board at the right time. So it had to be loaded sequentially in a manual manner for it to come back to service. And it took 1.5 hours for that one to be done.
It is here at the generator station M that one of these two standby generators failed when they were needed most. This failure affected Terminal 1A and the international arrivals section.
There is no explanation or excuse whatsoever on the incident that took place Friday night and Saturday.
They need to up their game. We cannot afford to lose revenue and lose our image as a country.
Tutafanya uchunguzi wa kina ili kuona jambo kama hili isiweze kutokea na lisiweze tena kuona kwa limeweza kupatikana majibu ya kisasa kupeana kwa Kenya.
Acting Kenya Airports Authority Managing Director Henry Ogoy says the authority will commission new generators acquired last year. The new generator has a total installed capacity of 8 megavolts amperes, which is bigger than the 6 MVA needed to power the airport.
Within the next 2 weeks, we will be in a very safe condition to sustain operations in the event of power blackout.
Trevor Ngendo for Prime Edition.
Now, Kenya plans to transition from the fuel levy model to smart road user charges that encompass both fuel-based and hybrid and electric vehicles. The Kenya Roads Board says this approach will ensure all road users in Kenya contribute towards the maintenance of roads. The board says more than 90% of its funding is from the fuel levy fund.
Kenya Roads Board Director General Rashid Mohammed says since the enactment of the Road Maintenance Levy Act in 1993, Kenya has heavily relied on the funds generated through the fuel levy for road maintenance. Through the levy, the board collects an average of 100 billion shillings, which goes towards the maintenance of roads in Kenya. However, the increasing uptake of electric vehicles in the country is proving a nightmare to the Roads Board.
We can have satellite technology to support the future road user charges.
In Kenya, the adoption of electric vehicles is growing at a triple-digit number, with updated figures from the National Transport and Safety Authority revealing that the uptake grew by 108% during the 2022-2023 financial year. According to the board's 5-year strategy, it aims to increase the road network in good and fair condition from 70% in 2023 to 84% end of 2027. Speaking during a meeting with the Africa Roads Maintenance Fund Association, Mohammed says the new funding model will encompass fuel-based as well as hybrid and electric vehicles.
The world is moving away from fossil fuels to electric fuels. This portends a major shift on road user charges. Kenya shall be leading most African countries as to where the smart road user charges shall be.
The board, in partnership with the Africa Roads Maintenance Fund Association, has signed a memorandum of understanding that will see the association set up its continental headquarters in Nairobi. Nduta Mokami for Prime Edition.
Herbal is formulated from a unique blend of natural herbs and is scientifically proven to strengthen teeth and keep gums healthy. Try Colgate Herbal, scientifically proven for strong teeth and healthy gums.
Kwa majina naitwa Nick Wenwa, mtaa yangu ni Ngong. Loto nimekuwa nikicheza sasa ni miezi 3, mwakisha at least kwa siku kucheza kama mara 2 hivi. Kwa hivyo unaweza wasihi mzidi kucheza na muendelee kucheza hilo Loto Moto. Watu wanashinda.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
Mimi niko chumbani kwa mgonjwa.
Unfortunately, mimi ndo nimebakia na mgonjwa pale. But don't worry. Mbona hukumpigia simu wakati ulipokuwa waje?
You always there.
Always.
Unadhani pakiongezwa Abel hapa mambo yatakuwaje? Itakuwa poa kweli? Abel ni mtoto wa kid. Asi mtoto wa kid. There's nothing we can do about it.
I'm not stupid, baby.
Estaré contigo.
And I...
Look here. If anything happens to Mom, it'll be your fault, Isabel. Do you understand? If anything happens to her, it's...
You told me that you were going to give me more money if he made sure of the vote.
You'll get it when the workers go on strike at that sawmill. Now get lost.
Nothing could have worked out better. Even if you faked the heart attack, my dear.
It's quite hard for me to believe what you're saying. I don't know. There's probably some mistake.
Isabel?
No quiero enterarme que me hace...
Welcome back. You're watching Prime Edition. Now, Kenya is among the African countries that are pushing for the establishment of Africa's own credit rating agency that will integrate the continent with global financial markets. The African Forum and Network on Debt and Development, AFRODAD, says the high-risk perception by global rating agencies is affecting the cost of financing for development, further aggravating the debt crisis. Wairimu Njenga, who is attending the 3rd edition of the African Conference on Debt and Development in Dakar, Senegal, tells us more.
Moody's, S&P and Fitch are the international agencies that are dominating the credit rating industry in Africa. And so far, 32 African countries have received a foreign rating from at least one of the 3 agencies. In July, Fitch downgraded Kenya's credit rating to negative, attributed to the deteriorating macroeconomic conditions. Kenya has joined the list of African countries that want the creation of a continental rating agency to be fast-tracked.
Establishing a broader African financial architecture that challenges the current one that is not working for the continent.
In March 2019, African Union ministers and finance and economy officially adopted a declaration that such an institution was needed, but little has been done.
What these credit rating agencies have done is they have intrinsically introduced a bias that raises the cost of borrowing or the cost of lending to the African continent. And when you do that, it already pushes lenders to think about factoring in those costs. And what it then does is it puts pressure on African governments to then make sure that they're able to commit and pay those debts at a higher risk premium or rate premium than would otherwise have been if there was a bit more of a fairer mechanism.
According to a recent study by UNDP, African countries lose approximately 10.8 trillion shillings due to biased subjective ratings. Speaking during the 3rd edition of the African Conference on Debt and Development, experts and policymakers pointed an accusing finger at the agencies for being quick to downgrade and slow to upgrade when it's due.
When you apply for this debt relief program through the G20 Common Framework, your rating agencies or your credit rating worthiness is downgraded by the credit rating agencies. And so what this is doing is it is acting as a disincentive for countries to be very open and transparent about how bad their debt situation is tending to be at the domestic level. And
experts and policymakers are dissatisfied with the approach and methodology used. They say the high-risk perception by international financiers has pushed upwards the cost of borrowing, hence the need to adopt a system that can price risk fairly.
Now, Africa's share of external debt has grown exponentially over the years. This has seen some countries like Zambia and Ghana ask for debt relief. Now, the conversation right here is looking for African solutions and a new world order. Weri Mujenga from Dakar, Senegal.
Thank you, Weri Mujenga, for that report. Now, the government will implement the Animal Health, Welfare and Protection Bill 2022 in a bid to spur the livestock industry. Director of Veterinary Services, Obadia Njagi, says the move is projected to improve production and streamline efficiency and sustainability.
As the demand for sustainable and ethically produced food continues to grow, the government is taking proactive steps to address social and ethical measures to ensure food security, environmental sustainability, and economic growth. The Director of Veterinary Services, Obadia Njagi, says the government is collaborating with industry associations to develop and enforce standards that prioritize humane treatment of animals and uphold the rights of workers.
The emerging issues are such that because of this concentration and the development of the urbanization, we are requiring a lot of animal products to feed ourselves. So these animal products may go with animals being exploited or overexploited, and that should worry us.
Industry players have asked the government to fast-track the implementation of animal health, welfare and protection bills to have more enforceable actions and align animal welfare protection to international standards and guidelines.
We already had the law, okay, that was looking at animal welfare. We have just, because of need, decided to update our law, okay? Of course, we have brought in other elements. We have been able to expound on the law of the national government, the law of the counties, because of taking care of devolution.
The government says it will continue fostering collaboration with international partners and organizations to exchange knowledge, best practices, and technological innovations that will position Kenya as a leader in sustainable livestock practices on the international stage.
Frederick Mwoki for Prime Edition.
And that's all the business news we had for you this evening. But of course, Prime Edition continues. Daniel Wahome is standing by to bring you the latest in the world of sports. My name is Betty Kiptum. Have yourself a good night. Bye-bye.
This August on Magical Scenes.
A big number of wildlife migration than there before. It started on the 14th of July.
So I can tell you that the season is looking pretty good.
A combination of wildlife and cultural tourism.
Hasa ni culture yanaonyesha nguo ya Maasai.
Magical Scenes only on KBC Channel 1.
What's in Your Kitchen? A show that celebrates Kenyan and African dishes.
Wait. Be careful. Yes, because I've seen some fire jump there.
That is called flambeing.
Flambeing. So tukiona moto tujue ni flambeing. Crushed methi seeds. Kila siku soma kitu mpya. Mchele yetu iko sawa. Hii iko sawa. Tumalize.
Sasa ni kwenda tukule.
Napima.
Hii ni chakula mzuri sana.
Nzito kabisa. Salivate this delicious meal on your screen while taking notes for the recipe. Don't miss What's in Your Kitchen on KBC.
A very good evening too. My name is Daniel Wahome and welcome to Prime Edition Sport. World record holder Beatrice Chepkoech will be aiming to return to winning ways when she takes to the track in the 3,000 meters steeplechase at the Zurich Diamond League meeting known as the Weltklasse tomorrow night. The 32-year-old bagged a silver medal at the World Championships in Budapest on Sunday, clocking 8 minutes 58.98 seconds. At the Diamond League meeting in London last month, she finished second behind compatriot Jacqueline Chepkoech. She will compete against Chepkoech, Faith Cherotich, who took a bronze in Budapest, and Fancy Cherono. Meanwhile, Abel Kipsang, who finished fourth in the 1,500 meters in Budapest, will also be competing in Zurich against compatriot Reynold Cheriot.
I had to chop her stride out all over these hurdles, and conversely, look, for me, Yavi, it's just tucked herself in behind Chepkoech. That's what you expect to see in an endurance race. It makes sense, but I think it's better to swing.
Now, FKF Women's Premier League champions Vihiga Queens have finished fourth in the CAF Champions League qualifiers held in Uganda after they were beaten by a goal to nil by Burundi champions Buja Queens in the third place playoff match. Vihiga controlled the game for large spells and wasted several chances to break the deadlock. Lydia Koth, however, scored the only goal in the 41st minute to give the Burundians the vital win. Both teams were aiming to win the tournament to represent the CAF region in this year's CAF Women's Champions League, but lost to Commercial Bank of Ethiopia and JKT Queens of Tanzania, respectively, in the semi-finals.
This corner kick taken, Marceline. And Vihiga Queens could have a chance here. Ball still tumbling around in the area, but cleared away by the ladies in gold, who now have a chance of turning defense into attack. And Tia Pista waiting for her colleagues to come through. And Viviana Quino cannot hold on to that ball. What a good chance. Players having spent so much time on the bench as Amunyolet, Martha, sends that cross in. Well, you could see the jump by Babidia Winnie, the interception.
Now, Tom Tikolo and Asif Karim were among veterans that were awarded during the third edition of the Kenya Past Cricketers Reunion Ceremony held in Nairobi. Nairobi Provincial Cricket Association Legends of Tanzania were among the cricketers awarded under the Special Awards category, while Sunil Sharkar and Alvito Rego capped awards under the Veteran Retired Umpires and Scorers category. Vilesh Shah and Mayur Shah were among the sponsors awarded, while Bipin Vora and Shamji Patel joined the rest under the Administrators Awards. Groundsmen like Mwangi Dirango and upcoming cricketers like Somia Gupta of Stray Leopards were also recognized during the event. Now, Manchester City striker Erling Haaland was named the Men's Player of the Year, while Arsenal forward Bukayo Saka bagged the PFA Young Player of the Year award during the Professional Footballers Association's award ceremony held last night at Lowley Theatre in Manchester. Stunning debut season for City, hitting 52 goals in all competitions, as Pep Guardiola Lauren James winning the Young Player of the Year award. Now, Tottenham Hotspur made their earliest Carabao Cup exit in almost 2 decades after losing 5-3 in a penalty shootout against Fulham at Craven Cottage. Crystal Palace came back from 2-0 down to win 4-2 at Plymouth, while Bournemouth also advanced to the third round after a late 3-2 win over Swansea.
Postecoglou suffered his first loss as Tottenham manager after his side lost 5-3 on penalties to Fulham in the second round of the Carabao Cup. Mickey Van de Ven's 19th minute on goal
a problem in towards Reed, flicked onwards and in.
put Fulham in front before Richarlison equalised with a header in the 56th minute.
Davis, Perisic, Richarlison and Scarlett and Solomon waiting in the middle. Richarlison!
A penalty shootout decided the result, as Marco Silva's side scored all 5 penalties while Davison Sanchez had his spot kick saved. Bournemouth beat Swansea 3-2 as new manager Andon Iraola secured his first victory. Matt Grimes gave Swansea the lead with a 9th minute penalty, but goals from David Brooks and Ahmed Traore turned things around in the second half.
Pure concentration. Here's Grimes, left-footed, top corner. Couple of bright moments for Bournemouth, kind of. That's a lovely ball. Here's David Brooks. David Brooks shoots! And square ball for Patterson. Cries of shoot, which he does. Left-footed, off the post, and in! Took a deflection on his way through.
Jamie Patterson equalised for Swansea, but Ryan Christie won it late for Bournemouth.
Here's Justin Clivett down the left for the Cherries, to the top of the box. Christie to his right, finds Christie. Christie shoots, and Ryan Christie scores!
Meanwhile, 3 goals in less than 5 second-half minutes saved Crystal Palace from a second-round exit as they came from behind to beat Plymouth 4-2. Ben Wen and Luke Candle both scored for Plymouth in the 6th and 46th minute to give them a 2-0 lead.
Fake shot, come cross as it comes in towards the back post. Into the mix it goes, and it's turned in. Cundle has it, edge of the penalty area. Oh, what a hit!
Before Palace completed a comeback with Olson Edwards' goal and Mateta's hat-trick.
5 shirts forward in white as it comes into the mix, and one of them gets on the end of it. It's a one-on-one with the defender. Across the 6-yard box, and it's tapped in, and Palace are level. Here's Schlupp, he's got runners ahead of him. One of them's Mateta, into the box he goes! Oh, what a hit! Jean-Philippe Mateta. Ooh, and they've lost it in midfield. Butcher loses it, and now it's Eze, 2-on-2, and Palace are in here. Is this it? It is! The hat-trick for Jean-Philippe Mateta.
Laban Marima, Prime Edition.
And on to tennis, where Carlos Alcaraz had a short start to the defense of his US Open men's title after German Open Dominic Kopfer retired injured midway through their first-round match. Andy Murray was among the 6 British players to win their first-round matches after defeating Frenchman Corentin Moutet 6-2, 7-5, 6-3 in an entertaining encounter.
Carlos Alcaraz easily strolled into the second round of the US Open after his opponent Kopfer retired, having rolled his ankle minutes into the match. Alcaraz won the US Open last year in the absence of Novak Djokovic. Former world number 1 Andy Murray saw off the challenge of Corentin Moutet in 3 sets before Dan Evans earned a 6-4, 6-2, 7-5 win over Colombia's Daniel Galan. Wimbledon runner-up Ons Jabeur said she considered quitting as she overcame breathing difficulties to book her place in the second round. The Tunisian 5th seed clinched 7-5, 7-6 win over Colombia's Camila Osorio on Louis Armstrong Stadium.
Well, that's the sport for tonight. Thank you for being with us. My name is Daniel Wahome. I would like to hand you over to John Jacob Kioria. And, you know, when you hear the name John Jacob Kioria, it always comes along with a conversation of some sort. And this time round, it's all about the East African community. What's the state of the region? And he's in conversation with the Secretary General, Dr. Peter Mathuki. John Jacob Kioria, the ball's on your court.
Thank you very much, Wahome. And indeed, as you rightly pointed out, we're speaking to the Secretary General of the East African Community. The conversation ranges from how the union looks like and indeed some of the politics that surround the union. That includes the obligation, that is financial obligation on the part of member countries, as well as the DRC crisis. And we sat down with the Secretary General, that is the Honorable Dr. Peter Mathuki. And this is where I usher you into the conversation as we wind up on this end of studio. Have a look. So we're speaking to the Secretary General of East African Community, the Honorable Dr. Peter Mathuki. We are in Arusha, Tanzania, and let's speak about the state of the East African community. Thank you very much, SG, for joining us.
Thank you.
To start off with, of course, there's been what you would say agitation to have Somalia join the East African community. Probably you can give us an update on how that process is ongoing, and most importantly, why we need Somalia in the East African community.
Thank you. First, I would start by saying that Somalia applied to become members of the East African community in 2010, and that is about 13 years ago. And this is an application that has been with us. And then the heads of states met in February 27th of 2021 and made some decisions, and one of them was to consider the admission of DRC and Somalia into the community. In fact, they directed the Council of Ministers and the Secretariat to actually fast track, if I may use that, the admission process of DRC and Somalia. And this obviously is informed by their own wisdom of why we need an expanded East African community. An expanded East African community is about markets. And therefore, when that decision was made, DRC admission now is behind us. Now we are with Somalia. And last July 2022, then the summit met in Arusha. And that again issue was revisited, just an update of where we are with the DRC and Somalia. DRC had already been done, and now it was an issue in Somalia. In fact, the president of Somalia was a special guest of the summit, and therefore he was in attendance. And he put a very strong case on why they feel Somalia should be part of the East African community. And the heads of state again looked at it and said, look, Somalia already, we have our own troops from Kenya, from Uganda, from Burundi already supporting the restoration of security situation in Somalia. And therefore, why can't we, looking at it, why can they be part of formally become part of EAC? And again, the people, the citizens of Somalia, again, they're all over. You go to any of the countries of East Africa, you find them doing business already. And that, again, they made a decision that we may need to actually implement that. Send a verification mission. They made a decision that a verification mission, which is always the first stage of admission, should be done. And that began by the Secretary General. Myself, I visited Mogadishu and conveyed that decision formally to the President of Somalia. And I told him that there's a formal decision by the summit that we should start the process of admitting Somalia. And that is, I'll be sending a mission, a verification mission. And they were quite positive about it. And they said, this is what we've been looking for. The application may have overstayed, but they were happy that to receive those news. And therefore, in February this year, in 2023, we sent a verification mission to Mogadishu for the team to go and meet the government, different actors in Somalia, and see their preparedness, their readiness to join the community. And this delegation was, of course, composed of experts from all the partner states of the EAC, and they came up with a report. That report was discussed by partner states of the EAC, and after they discussed this report, it came out again as an item during our last summit that was held in May, actually end of May, in Bujumbura, where the heads of states, they looked at, they got an update, they said, why can't you now go to the next stage? And the next stage is now discussion. In fact, they directed the Council and Secretariat to urgently start negotiations with Somalia and provide that report by the next summit. The next summit is on 30th of November, ordinary summit. And so this is something that a decision has been made. We are preparing now to start negotiation with Somalia. But to say, why admitting Somalia into the East African community?
And as you answer that, SG, because there are those who say, with the instability that you have alluded to, why partner states in the EAC are in Somalia today, there are those who say, with the instability in Somalia, it's probably too soon to admit Somalia into the EAC.
Soon forward. Somalia has been having independence for the last 50 years or so. EAC has been existing for the last 25 or so. So soon from what? And I said earlier that the heads of state, they are feeling that already Somalia is interacting so much closely with the East African Community partner states. And therefore, naturally, even geographically, Somalia is part of fully East Africa because they are, in fact, on the eastern part of Kenya and they are bordering Kenya. So naturally, they are part of the eastern part of Africa. And therefore, it's not an issue of the instability. It's the issue of how can we work together as countries of East Africa to restore stability in Somalia. And once stability is done in Somalia, look at the huge opportunities that exist in Somalia being part of EAC. One, the bloc will become bigger. And therefore, when speaking anywhere in the global platform, talking about East Africa, the population is bigger. We're talking about markets here. With the stability of Somalia, we are able to have investors go to Somalia from any of the countries of East Africa. Look at the coastal line of Somalia, 3,300 kilometers coastal line. Is the longest coastal line in Africa. What does that mean? It means once Somalia becomes part of that coastline becomes part of East Africa. And it is going to make it easy and cheaper for transport of goods that are coming from outside East Africa, coming to East Africa. And the goods coming from East Africa going outside East Africa. Because the coastline will be huge, and therefore the cost of transport, the cost of receiving, that will be cheaper. The bigger the regional economic bloc East Africa is, the more competitive we become in the global arena. The reason why we are talking of the United States, China, Europe, Russia is because of market, big population. And we feel that a bigger regional economic bloc would make it now, as East African, to be competitive. In fact, we are looking after Somalia joins. Can Ethiopia join? Can Djibouti join? If Sudan, that is facing problems today, was part of East African community, it would be easier now for us to deal with the situation in Sudan. And therefore, imagine now a regional economic bloc that covers those 10 to 12 countries with a population of around 800 million people. What it means in terms of jobs opportunities, what it means for revenue, what it means for you as a country, Kenya, that is an economic power, taking advantage of this huge market.
Quite an interesting one. But of course, now with the entrance of DRC, when it was admitted, it made this economic bloc a coast-to-coast economic bloc. But there's one challenge, SG, financial obligations on the part of member states. Probably from where you sit, you can be able to tell us, because, for example, Burundi, South Sudan are some of the countries that are unable to meet their obligations to the EAC. And what you're doing as Secretary General, of course, alongside your colleagues, to ensure that as you work with these partners, that these obligations are met.
Every country, of course, has an obligation in terms of what they're supposed to do. And that communication has been ongoing between the countries and the Secretariat. And already we've been engaging. Some countries are making a lot of efforts. But that is not making us to lose focus on the bigger vision. The bigger vision is to have a very strategic regional economic bloc called East Africa.
Right. Yeah. The One Passport Treaty, DRC and South Sudan are yet to ratify. Of course, you would understand DRC just joined the other day. But one would ask, why is South Sudan lagging behind in ratifying?
We have an East African passport, which is e-passport, which actually, when you look at it, when you look at your passport, is written East African Community, but then Republic of Kenya. And so is every country. Republic of South Sudan, they're already in the process of doing it. We have a program of integrating Republic of South Sudan into the community. And that is one thing we have been closely engaging with them so that they can have passports, e-passports actually, which are looking like other partner states. And so is DRC now is in the process of getting to understand their obligations, and we are taking them through.
About 2 months ago, Kenya signed a trade deal with the European Union, that is the EU. Of course, there are experts who've described it as ambitious, and probably we'll leave it to the experts out there to talk about it being ambitious. But what about the questions of
what about the other East African nations? Did Kenya betray her partners by signing the Kenya-EU deal?
Yeah, actually it's called the Economic Partnership Agreement, that is HEPAS, between Kenya and the European Union. And this is a discussion that has been actually happening between the EU and the East African community. And already we are in it ourselves. And therefore what happens if one partner state decides to sign a treaty or a trade agreement with a third party, then there is a process which already Kenya has done. And that is to say that you are supposed to inform the Secretariat that they are ready to proceed with the signing a trade agreement with a third party. And the question is, has Kenya done that? Yes, Kenya has done that. Kenya has informed us that they are planning, actually before even, they were planning to enter into a trade agreement with EU. And the reasons that they gave was, one, that the industry that is supported by that agreement is huge, because we are talking about the horticulture, we are talking about the floriculture, and you know the Kenyan flowers, how and their markets in the EU, and the kind of jobs that they support and the revenues collected. And therefore now, by not entering this, then the problem would have been, would Kenyans lose? Yes, Kenyans would lose, and they said, using the variable geometry, which is provided for in the treaty establishing East Africa Community provides for variable geometry. Variable geometry means if a country, one or two, is ready to take a certain decision, you can take as others follow. And the condition they give is that, therefore, you should inform the Secretariat, and the Secretariat should communicate officially to other countries that this particular country is planning to take the particular step. And those are the things Kenya has already done. And this is informed by the trade issues that have been existing between Kenya and the EU. Secondly, the EU, the HEPA, the Economic Partnership Agreement, and how it is structured, the architecture of it says that classifies all the countries of East Africa differently. They classify partner states of EAC as actually underdeveloped, and they classify Kenya different as developing. When they classify countries, other countries of East Africa as LDCs or least developed, and they classify Kenya as developing, what means is that Kenya cannot access the EU market under the same terms as the LDCs. The LDCs, which is other countries of East Africa, can access the EU market under a program called EBA, everything but arms, meaning you can take everything to Europe but arms. But Kenya cannot enjoy that because they are classified as developing. And therefore, what they can only export to EU using what we call EPA now, which is Economic Partnership Agreement. And therefore, most of the countries in East Africa would say, why should we be in a hurry to sign EPA, and yet we can access the European market under EBA, everything but arms? But Kenya says, if we don't strike this deal, then we are going to lose, because we cannot access the EU market under everything but arms, which is EBA. We can only access by EPA. And that's why Kenya signed this agreement, to make sure they don't lose the EU market, which is very strategic for them.
I think that was quite a detailed explanation. On the political confederation bid by EAC, as well as one currency. And of course, we will talk about the other challenges facing EAC at a later stage. But with the prevailing situation, with the prevailing condition, how are we doing in terms of achieving the political federation and a one currency bid for EAC?
We are already under a lot of pressure from the private sector, but also from the citizens of East Africa, that we must do something about it. And already the Council of Ministers and the heads of state, they assist in this matter, and we are facilitating this. Already we have gone to do the first thing, which is setting up what we call the East African Monetary Institute, EAMI, East African Monetary Institute. This institute is one that sets now the roadmap towards having a common currency. Already the council has been meeting and discussing this, and we are finalizing actually on who of the countries going to host, these countries have for shown interest. Kenya has strongly shown interest in hosting this, saying therefore these facilities. Tanzania has applied for it. Of course, Uganda has also done it. Other countries have shown interest. So it's about a decision on who is going to host. And this is something that is under serious consideration by organs of the community, by the summit, but also by the council. So once that is done, then we go to the next stage, is now having, how can we now have what we call the macroeconomic convergence criteria, which was set. And the 2023 actually was the deadline when we were supposed to have a common currency. Now we cannot have it. So now when experts are meeting, the governors of central bank are saying, give us a bit of time. And when they met, they were saying maybe 2030 is when we're likely to have it. But I challenged, I said, we can have this currency actually in the next 2 years, and it is possible, it's doable. The political confederation is the fourth pillar of our integration. And what has been happening is that partner states, we agreed and said we need to have a political confederation, and that decision is already there. In effect, the community appointed President Museveni as the champion of this. And I can say he's been doing very well, because through him, we have done a lot of consultations. And consultations are done between partner states and the citizens of East Africa. Already we have organized meetings with Burundi as a country, and they have given their views. And already we have a report from Burundi on their position on political confederation. And so is Uganda. Uganda has already finalized. 2 months ago, we were in Kenya. We had a whole tour of the entire Republic of Kenya to get views from citizens and different actors on this political confederation. And in all these reports, it seems to be very positive. They are saying, in fact, we need to move faster. To them, that is the way to go. And then after this, we are planning to go to other countries. That is United Republic of Tanzania, Rwanda, South Sudan, and DRC now. And once that is complete, then we come up with a report, which then we shall go to the next level of trying to confederate our East Africa. So the first thing is getting a constitution that would now midwife the political confederation.
We have countries within the region that are experiencing domestic problems. How do you marry this entire situation and come up with a constitution that would birth a political federation when you have a situation like that?
Yes, it is true, we have national constitutions. And these national constitutions are definitely the living creatures of each partner state. But the constitution that we are talking about is how do we confederate politically? How do we work together? How do we bring closer the people of East Africa to be one people towards one destiny? And that is why the Constitution on political confederation will now take into consideration the views and borrow from all these national constitutions, so that there's no contradiction whatsoever, and to make sure that now those documents now are in tandem and they are geared towards uniting our people. Because at the end of the day, is how do we unite our people in East Africa?
Let's talk about DRC, SG, and in relation to the deployment of ICRAF, the East African Community Regional Force. I was there for a week in April in DRC, and of course got to see the situation firsthand. But from where you sit as SG, what do you think are the major hits for ICRAF since it went into DRC, of course preceded by the forces of the Republic of Kenya?
Yeah, I must first and foremost want to congratulate our heads of state for the decision they took to restore peace in Eastern DRC, because that is what will open business opportunities for us. But secondly, I want to congratulate our forces, our men and women in uniform who dedicated their lives to go and support restoration of peace in Eastern DRC. And I think that is one thing they have done proud to East Africa, that they're able to come out strongly and support one of our partner states to ensure they have stability. And that is basically what they've been doing. And some of the things we have experienced since they went to Eastern DRC, things where there used to be a lot of hostilities and a lot of fights, that has stopped. So there's cessation of hostilities. And that is very important. And that has given now a chance to the second track, which is now the political process, which is led by the facilitator of the East African community. And that has already, we have experienced it. There's no longer much fighting in Eastern DRC. Secondly, the assignment that they were given was some of the rebels to actually withdraw from some of the places that they had occupied. And that has already been achieved.
There appears to be clarity on the part of the forces that are in DRC on what they are doing. There also appears to be confusion amongst the masses on what the role of ICRAF is in DRC. So to clear the air for those that will be able to watch from all these nations that form East Africa, was the primary mandate of ICRAF offensive or defensive?
The role of our regional force was to support on restoration of peace in Eastern DRC. And restoration of peace in DRC was within the framework of our own chiefs of command forces who met and said, the way we can support restoration of peace is first of all to ensure that there is cessation of hostilities. And therefore the issue of whether it was either this or that, it's about, can we restore peace in Eastern DRC? And are we in process, are we in progress, are we achieving that? And the answer I can give from where I sit, yes, we are making some positive progress. Yes.
His Excellency Felix Tshisekedi of DRC has been making diplomatic, what you would say, diplomatic trips to different countries, particularly within Africa. And there's some kind of agitation for him, for SADC also to intervene in the situation in DRC. I mean, what does that mean for regional integration and for a new member that just joined EAC?
You see, the interest of DRC is also to ensure that they enjoy peace in Eastern DRC. And so the objective of the president of DRC is the same objective as other heads of state. There is invitation also for SADC to come and support. It's not in contradiction. It is simply working together. In fact, once SADC will deploy, it will work with the East African Regional Force and agree on how they are going to cooperate to ensure that they restore peace in Eastern DRC.
So far since deployment, Kenya has produced two force commanders. That is the former Commander Major General Jeff Nyaga, and now we have Major General Alfaxad Kyugu. But there's been, and that debate has emanated from Kinshasa, the need for a rotational commander. Is that a conversation you're having at your level?
Yeah, you see, when a decision was made to deploy a regional force, East African Regional Force in Eastern DRC, and Kenya had the largest contingent in Eastern DRC, automatically in the terms that they had to have the force commander. And this is a decision that was made by the ministers of defense, but also chiefs of defense forces of other countries, and that was not a problem. And therefore, when the tenure of Jeff Nyaga, Major General Jeff Nyaga, ended, then Kenya felt that it was not necessary to have a vacuum, and therefore Kenya had to have somebody. And that discussion of having a rotational, that is still something that can be decided, but collectively by all the countries, and particularly the chiefs of defense forces, who are the experts in this matter.
Out here, Your Excellency, much of what we see are what you would call tensions between Kigali and Kinshasa. Of course, I don't want to mention the names here, but tensions between Kigali and Kinshasa. From where you sit as Secretary General, are those matters that have come before you? Do these tensions exist, or it's just a matter of public perception?
You see, in a family setup, there will be either one or two issues you don't agree, but that does not mean you are not a family. East African community is a family of 7 partner states, and the countries that you are mentioning are very important members of this family. And that is why not only those, but all of them, whenever an issue arises, we give a lot of significance in trying to resolve, because that is very important. Yes.
And that means then you've taken proactive measures to end the tension in that family.
The family is growing, and when the family is growing, it means it is our responsibility one as a secretariat, but also different organs of the community, from the summit, Council of Ministers, the secretariat, to work together to ensure that whenever tensions arise or whenever a difference arises from one country to another, we resolve. It has happened before where people kept on saying, oh, there are trade wars between Kenya and Tanzania, or there is a situation between Uganda and South Sudan, or Uganda and Rwanda, or this country and this country. But we've been able to navigate and come out strong as a community.
As we come to the tail end of this interview, I want to take you to some other simmering tensions. You talked about the facilitator of the peace process in DRC. That is the retired president of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta. But then the local politics in the Republic of Kenya. How is that auguring when you have his successor directly accusing him of certain things within the borders of the Republic of Kenya, but on the other hand, he's in an international platform and where he's facilitating the peace process, of course, courtesy of EAC. How are you navigating that as an East African community?
In the beginning of the interview, you said we're in Arusha, and we're in Arusha. I'm not in Nairobi. So I may not be privy to the issues that you're talking about, but what I can only say is that East African community is stable. The heads of states made a decision to have a facilitator, and that decision, the facilitator is discharging their mandate within the summit. And therefore, since we're in Arusha, Nairobi issues, you need to update me, because it's quite some time since I went to Nairobi. But yes, we are happy with the decisions made by the summit, and we keep on getting reports from some of these services that heads of states deployed to help them, get some of these things.
Honorable Secretary General, what does the future portend for the East African community? What does the future look like for the East African community?
I see East African community, by the way, as we speak, East African community is the most integrated regional economic bloc in Africa. And I see this in a few years to be the most integrated regional economic bloc in the world. Because, as I told you in the beginning, we are looking at an East Africa that brings together 800 million people. And when we talk of 800 million people, we are talking of half of the population of African continent. But secondly, a population that is bigger than the United States, a population that is bigger than EU. And that, what does that mean? It means market. What does that mean? It means now we are able now as East African be able to produce our own goods, create our own market, create our own wealth, ensure the welfare of the people of East Africa is taken care of, ensure that we can compete now internationally.
Thank you very much, SD, for your time, and we appreciate it. Asante sana. We wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And thank you for the fantastic.
I need your support. The media fraternity, you have a big role to support all of us in trying to create awareness to the citizens of East Africa. In fact, to me, you should be an organ by yourself, the organ of the media fraternity that helps us now to communicate. Because this community is about the people. It's about the people. How do people get to know what we are doing here? They can only know what we are doing here through yourselves or media. So I invite you to become part of this journey of integrating the East African community.
And of course, the success of the East African community obviously also means that we also succeed. And thank you very much for the invitation. We've been speaking to the Secretary General of the East African Community, the Honorable Dr. Peter Mathuki. The future of the East African community can only get brighter. Thank you for watching. God bless.
Hapana, maybe excess. Nini wewe shughulika na steering, mimi niko huku nyuma na watu. Tunavuja sheria bwana, tutashikwa na makarao. Mimi sitaki noma na polisi. Si overdo na ku risk life yao wase. Hapana. Anyewe for once umebonga sense. Leo umebonga kama dere smart.
Usalama barabarani ni jukumu letu sote. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na NTSA kwa ushirikiano na the European Union.
Beba. Ujisqueeze hapo watano kusqueeze. Hapana. Maybe excess. Nini wewe shughulika na steering, mimi niko huku nyuma na watu. Mnavuja